Fort Benning in 1927 marked a turning point because American officers confronted outdated doctrine, and they recognized that slow battlefield responses no longer matched modern weapon lethality. The post-Great War landscape demanded new ideas, and Marshall intended to shape an army capable of reacting instantly under fire. Training fields baked under Georgia heat. Yet young officers learned that decisive movement mattered more than perfect formation, because machine guns and artillery punished hesitation. Marshall insisted that every drill scenario emphasize initiative, and he encouraged lieutenants to act without waiting for distant approval. Officers practiced rapid flanking maneuvers, since Marshall believed aggressive movement created battlefield shock, and he emphasized that the enemy should never dictate tempo. This thinking diverged sharply from traditional European doctrine, which favored deliberate planning, and it planted seeds for a future American identity. Classroom instruction grew equally intense because Marshall forced students to critique outdated manuals, and he pushed them to imagine conflicts where speed eclipsed caution. He reshaped intellectual habits by rewarding audacity, and officers gradually embraced a philosophy centered on offensive spirit. Live fire exercises showcased this evolution, as instructors created scenarios requiring immediate counteraction, and soldiers learned to disrupt ambush through swift forward pressure. Such drills bred confidence, because troops recognized that movement under fire often reduced casualties more effectively than passive shelter. Marshall frequently walked training grounds, observing reactions to simulated threats, and he corrected hesitation with quiet precision. He praised officers who acted decisively, because he understood that battlefield leadership hinged on reflexive courage, not bureaucratic procedure. Small unit leaders were encouraged to command with autonomy, since Marshall believed dispersed combat required independent judgment, and he viewed rigid hierarchy as dangerous. This decentralization laid foundations for American flexibility, which later contrasted sharply with other Allied forces. Fort Benning's tactical experiments spread steadily, influencing doctrine across infantry schools, and officers carried these ideas into later commands. The institution became a crucible where modern American combat thought emerged, and its graduates absorbed a mindset shaped by relentless urgency. Marshall's reforms transformed Fort Benning into a proving ground for immediate counterattack principles, because soldiers learned that aggression disrupted enemy plans and quick retaliation restored battlefield momentum. These lessons later defined American actions during World War II, proving the enduring power of early innovation. By 1932, the new philosophy had crystallized, and Fort Benning stood recognized as the birthplace of a doctrine favoring rapid response, initiative, and offensive determination. Marshall departed having reshaped an army's future, and his intellectual legacy would soon be tested amid global conflict. George Marshall entered the interwar army convinced that outdated Great War doctrine endangered America, because he believed modern firepower demanded faster decisions, and he pushed relentlessly to break institutional complacency. Senior officers resisted change, yet Marshall insisted that future wars would reward speed rather than methodical positional rigidity. He challenged traditional emphasis on centralized control, because he saw that long communication chains slowed battlefield response, and he argued that junior leaders needed authority to act instantly. This decentralization unsettled conservative commanders, yet it laid groundwork for a uniquely American system built on initiative. Marshall restructured training cycles so officers confronted unpredictable scenarios, because he believed uncertainty produced better judgment, and he demanded solutions delivered under strict time pressure. Exercises shifted from parade ground perfection toward chaotic simulations, forcing units to respond immediately rather than wait for orders. He introduced critiques where officers defended decisions under scrutiny because he wanted them comfortable making rapid choices, and he treated hesitation as a tactical failure. Through this method, Marshall forged leaders accustomed to seizing initiative, reflecting a philosophy centered on aggressive action rather than cautious endurance. Old manuals stressed fixed defenses and measured withdrawals, yet Marshall viewed such thinking as dangerous, because he recognized that enemy momentum grew when defenders paused. He argued that counterattacks restored psychological equilibrium, and he trained units to strike back instantly after absorbing enemy fire. To reinforce this mindset, Marshall expanded small unit autonomy during maneuvers, because he knew dispersed formations required independent judgment, and he encouraged creative battlefield solutions. Officers learned to reposition squads rapidly, exploit weak points, and overwhelm attackers through tempo rather than attrition. He also reshaped staff planning, replacing linear processes with flexible frameworks, because he believed commanders must adapt quickly to shifting conditions, and he discouraged reliance on rigid timetables. This shift created a culture where speed of execution mattered as much as clarity of design. Marshall's reforms rippled outward as graduates carried his ideas into commands across the country, because they recognized that modern battlefields punished slowness, and they adopted training emphasizing shock and rapid maneuver. Over time, these concepts became embedded in American doctrine. By challenging entrenched assumptions, Marshall transformed the Army's intellectual core, because he replaced static thinking with dynamic action, and he prepared an institution for wars demanding immediate response. His influence shaped every major wartime decision, from platoon drills to theater strategies. Through relentless pressure, Marshall built an army defined by initiative and speed because he understood that decisive counteraction could change battles, and his doctrinal revolution helped create a force ready to meet global conflict with extraordinary agility. The Louisiana Maneuvers forced American units to confront vast distances and shifting threats, because commanders needed to test new doctrine under realistic strain, and the exercises revealed that rapid reaction determined success. Troops learned that hesitation allowed simulated enemies to exploit gaps, demonstrating how speed shaped battlefield momentum. Infantry officers found themselves improvising constantly, because maneuver routes changed without warning, and they realized the importance of immediate counterattacks. When defending forces paused, opposing units advanced freely, proving Marshall's belief that swift retaliation disrupted enemy plans more effectively than deliberate retreats. Armored formations practiced sudden thrusts across open terrain because planners wanted to evaluate how quickly tanks could exploit breakthroughs, and these drills highlighted the advantages of initiative. Crews discovered that aggressive movement disoriented opposition controllers, allowing small armored groups to collapse larger defensive grids through tempo. Artillery observers refined communication procedures during the exercises, because shifting front lines demanded flexible fire support, and they practiced delivering barrages within minutes of receiving reports. This responsiveness encouraged infantry to push forward confidently, reinforcing the principle that coordinated speed multiplied combat effectiveness across all branches. Air-ground coordination teams tested new radio systems, because aircraft needed real-time information to strike maneuvering targets, and these innovations strengthened mobile warfare concepts. Pilots attacked convoys marked by rapid ground updates, demonstrating how swift information flow supported continuous pressure on enemy units. Logistical units confronted unprecedented demands during the maneuvers, because rapid movement strained supply lines, and they practiced delivering fuel and ammunition under intense time limits. Their success proved that fast operations required equally fast sustainment, embedding speed into every level of Army organization. Commanders observed that immediate counterattacks restored tactical control, because simulated enemy breakthroughs faltered when met with swift local assaults, and this validated Marshall's core doctrine. Units trained to react instantly gained the upper hand, proving that initiative could outperform numerical advantage. The maneuvers exposed officers who relied on slow, methodical planning, because those leaders consistently lost simulated engagements, and evaluators emphasized the necessity of decisive judgment. As a result, many commanders adopted faster decision-making habits, reshaping leadership standards across the Army. Junior leaders gained confidence operating independently during dispersed operations, because the exercises placed them far from headquarters oversight, and they learned to seize fleeting opportunities. This autonomy supported rapid counteraction, ensuring the Army could respond effectively even when communication faltered. By the conclusion of the maneuvers, the nation recognized that speed and initiative formed the backbone of modern warfare, because the tests demonstrated their decisive impact, and they cemented immediate counterattack doctrine within American strategy. This transformation prepared the Army for the fast-moving campaigns that soon followed. American forces entered North Africa carrying Marshall's doctrine with them, because leaders wanted to see whether immediate counterattacks worked under real fire, and early engagements revealed both strengths and steep learning curves. Units discovered that rapid movement shocked inexperienced Axis troops, giving Americans unexpected advantages despite their operational inexperience. At Casarini Pass, American positions collapsed initially, because green units hesitated under sudden pressure, and German armor exploited every delay. Yet small groups that counterattacked instantly slowed the enemy advance, proving that Marshall's principles held value even amid confusion and poor coordination. After the setback, commanders emphasized immediate retaliation, because lessons showed that German forces feared fast local counterblows, and American patrols began launching near-instant strikes. These actions disrupted enemy reconnaissance efforts, restoring confidence while teaching soldiers that speed could neutralize tactical surprise. Infantry battalions practiced rapid regrouping under fire, because shifting desert battles demanded constant repositioning, and they learned to counterattack before German units consolidated gains. This technique prevented encirclements, allowing American forces to stabilize lines that previously crumbled when defensive doctrine emphasized caution. Armored formations applied aggressive thrusts during subsequent clashes, because their early failures highlighted the dangers of passive maneuvering, and tank crews embraced forward pressure. When American armor struck quickly after enemy probes, German commanders reported unexpected resistance, demonstrating growing Allied proficiency. Artillery officers mastered flexible fire missions in the desert because immediate counterattacks required rapid barrages, and forward observers adjusted fire with unprecedented speed. These swift responses allowed infantry to advance confidently, knowing supporting fire would match their pace and discourage German momentum. Air support became increasingly responsive, because pilots coordinated closely with ground forces demanding instant strikes, and fighter bombers targeted Axis movements within minutes. This fast integration amplified the impact of counterattacks, reducing the effectiveness of carefully planned German operations across contested valleys. Logistical units refined mobile resupply techniques, because rapid actions burned fuel and ammunition quickly, and supply trucks operated dangerously close to the front. Their success ensured counterattacking units maintained tempo, confirming that speed depended on sustainment just as much as courage. Officers gained confidence applying Marshall's decentralized leadership model, because battlefield chaos forced decisions without higher approval, and junior leaders launched counterattacks whenever opportunities arose. This adaptability undermined German expectations of slow Allied reactions, gradually shifting tactical initiative toward American forces. By the end of the North African campaign, the Army recognized that immediate counterattacks worked effectively in live combat, because hard-fought battles proved their value and the doctrine evolved through blood and adaptation. These early victories forged a faster, more assertive American fighting force ready for future campaigns. British commanders relied on deliberate preparation, because their experiences in the First World War taught them that hasty counterattacks caused catastrophic losses, and they preferred structured firepower before committing infantry. This caution produced stable defense lines, allowing British units to absorb pressure rather than gamble on immediate retaliation. Soviet doctrine emphasized massed formations because early war disasters convinced leaders that isolated counterattacks wasted manpower, and they relied on planned operations instead of rapid local strikes. Large-scale counteroffensives restored momentum, demonstrating that patience and concentration outweighed spontaneous tactical reactions across the vast Eastern Front. British artillery doctrine prioritized carefully calculated barrages, because accuracy depended on precise registration and commanders avoided firing without preparation. This method produced overwhelming firepower when executed properly, yet it limited the Army's ability to respond instantly when enemy units struck unexpectedly along dispersed positions. Soviet commanders relied heavily on political oversight, because strict control ensured discipline during chaotic engagements, and decentralized decision-making was discouraged. This structure slowed tactical reactions, making immediate counterattacks rare, but it supported massive coordinated offensives once overwhelming strength gathered. British infantry operated within tightly organized formations because command philosophy valued cohesion over spontaneous initiative, and soldiers waited for orders rather than acting independently. This preserved unit structure under fire, though it often ceded early momentum to opponents who attacked aggressively. Soviet planners focused on operational depth, because their strategy aimed to break enemy lines through scale, and they viewed small counterattacks as wasteful distractions. When German penetrations occurred, Soviet units often withdrew temporarily, offering resistance only once reinforcements matched or exceeded enemy strength. British armored doctrine favored controlled advances, because tank units were expensive and few, and commanders feared losses from impulsive maneuvers. This caution preserved armored strength for decisive battles, though it reduced opportunities to counterattack swiftly during early stages of enemy offensives. Soviet forces used blocking detachments and strict discipline because leaders feared disorder in inexperienced units, and immediate counterattacks risked uncontrolled retreat if they failed. This system stabilized fragile divisions, but it limited flexibility when swift, localized responses could have disrupted German assaults. British leadership valued communication before movement, because coordination across multinational forces required clarity, and hasty reactions risked friendly fire or misalignment. This ensured well-organized actions, though enemy breakthroughs sometimes expanded while British units awaited consolidated orders. Soviet commanders accepted initial losses to preserve strength for later counterblows, because their doctrine favored endurance, and immediate reactions seemed tactically insufficient against rapid German armor. Their cautious approach contrasted sharply with American emphasis on initiative, creating distinct Allied styles shaped by history, geography, and strategic priorities. December 1944, Bastogne, Belgium, witnessed an encircled American garrison tightening its strained resolve as determined German forces pressed relentlessly forward. Within snowbound streets, officers emphasized immediate counterattack doctrine, reinforcing cohesion through decisive small unit thrusts that unsettled advancing enemy formations during combat hours. American commanders, aware of collapsing regional routes, relied on swift localized aggression to disrupt German pace and reclaim critical tactical breathing space. These rapid engagements, executed under freezing winds, preserved morale by proving that initiative remained possible despite overwhelming numerical pressure across Bastogne perimeters. Patrol leaders, moving through dense Ardennes woodlines, launched immediate counterblows whenever German scouts probed outward, preventing coordinated breakthroughs along vulnerable approaches. Their disciplined reactions, shaped by earlier training cycles, inflicted uncertainty on attackers who expected static defenders rather than aggressive perimeter ripostes. Inside Bastogne's shrinking pocket, field commanders coordinated overlapping fire lanes, ensuring each counterattack built momentum despite worsening ammunition shortages there. This deliberate integration, sustained under artillery bombardment, enabled isolated companies to repel assaults that sought to fracture their interlocking defensive geometry overnight. Combat teams, rotating between exposed ridgelines and shattered villages, applied immediate counterstrikes to misdirect enemy armor converging from multiple forested axes. Such abrupt offensives, delivered before German units consolidated, forced attackers to reconsider tempo, granting trapped defenders precious moments to reorganize interior positions. Medical stations, strained by casualties, benefited indirectly as quick counterattacks pushed firefights outward, reducing sustained pressure on vulnerable aid corridors. These marginal gains, achieved through relentless initiative, preserved critical evacuation routes supporting units whose endurance determined Bastogne's continued ability to resist. Artillery observers, operating under clouded skies, coordinated immediate fires that amplified counterattacks, striking assembly areas before German formations stabilized overnight. This synergy, forged amid bitter cold, granted defenders a psychological edge as each rapid counterblow demonstrated unwavering determination to deny battlefield momentum. Engineers, laboring beside infantry, fortified crossroads while launching sudden counterthrusts that kept German spearheads uncertain about American strength distribution there. Their flexible actions, guided by necessity, reduced pressure on overstretched battalions whose resilience under encirclement depended on maintaining unpredictable patterns of resistance. Throughout the siege, junior leaders demonstrated initiative by launching counterattacks that preserved terrain essential for sustaining interior command networks thereafter. Their coordinated energy, strengthened by shared hardship, denied German units predictable windows, ensuring Bastogne's fragmented perimeter operated with surprising continuity. As December deepened, relentless counterattacks reinforced the impression of American tenacity, convincing German commanders that Bastogne remained unbreakable despite isolation. This sustained defiance, built through immediate action, shaped the broader Ardennes campaign by denying momentum to forces seeking strategic rupture across Belgium. December 1944 brought frozen uncertainty to Bastogne, where General Anthony McAuliffe maintained disciplined composure while confronting mounting German demands. His calm presence influenced every weary defender, encouraging measured aggression that balanced tactical caution with immediate responses against probing enemy thrusts. When German envoys delivered their surrender ultimatum, McAuliffe dismissed the proposal instantly, demonstrating unwavering certainty that determined resistance still offered strategic advantage. His concise reply traveled quickly through snowbound lines, reinforcing collective resolve among infantrymen who relied on shared defiance to stabilize threatened sectors. McAuliffe's message created disciplined boldness, encouraging officers to launch counterattacks whenever German units attempted advances against critical junctions. These swift movements disrupted planned enemy concentrations, preventing momentum from building along approaches where armored thrusts sought exploitable weaknesses within the perimeter. Despite cold storms and artillery barrages, McAuliffe projected steady authority, enabling commanders to maintain coordination across positions threatened by continuous pressure. His emphasis on initiative reinforced disciplined adaptability, ensuring small detachments could respond immediately whenever German patrols probed defensive gaps along wooded approaches. Morale strengthened noticeably after the famous reply circulated, giving soldiers confidence that leadership remained firmly committed to resisting every concentrated German attempt. This shared belief strengthened exhausted riflemen into resilient defenders, motivating them to implement aggressive countermeasures whenever artillery fire preceded enemy probes. McAuliffe understood that immediate reaction shaped battlefield tempo, compelling units to strike decisively before enemy formations gained operational freedom near vulnerable crossroads. His doctrine required constant vigilance, encouraging continuous reconnaissance that identified German staging efforts before they matured into coordinated thrusts against weakened ridgelines. Even with ammunition shortages worsening, McAuliffe prioritized initiative, insisting that disrupted enemy plans reduced pressure better than passive endurance within positions. His guidance favored sharp counterstrikes, allowing small groups to unsettle advancing forces whose commanders struggled to assess American strength during the encirclement. McAuliffe's calm influence extended through staff officers, strengthening planning under fire as shifting weather limited resupply opportunities for the garrison. Their coordination enabled timely redistribution of dwindling resources, ensuring critical sectors retained sufficient strength to repel intensified enemy assaults during nighttime operations. As German armor probed deeper into surrounding woods, American defenders executed counterthrusts shaped by McAuliffe's philosophy, reclaiming initiative despite environmental and tactical disadvantages. These actions slowed approaching battle groups, forcing German commanders to recalculate timetables that depended on rapid breakthroughs before Allied relief elements advanced toward Bastogne. McAuliffe's defiant calm ultimately embodied Bastogne's endurance, proving that strong leadership reinforced disciplined aggression capable of shaping operational outcomes during the Ardennes offensive. His mindset influenced future doctrine, demonstrating how composed authority combined with aggressive defense could stabilize collapsing fronts during moments when strategic balance faltered. Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams advanced toward Bastogne with determined urgency, applying Marshall's doctrine through relentless movement that denied German forces time to stabilize captured ground. His command emphasized continuous pressure, allowing armored elements to strike rapidly before enemy units established cohesive defensive lines across snow-covered terrain near critical road networks. Abrams pushed his tanks forward despite worsening weather, recognizing that hesitation would surrender momentum during a decisive phase of the Ardennes offensive. His relentless pace demonstrated confidence in aggressive doctrine, compelling German commanders to redirect reserves unexpectedly as American armor closed distance faster than anticipated. Abrams maintained communication across scattered columns, coordinating rapid thrusts that avoided predictable routes where German ambushers positioned anti-tank guns. His flexibility allowed maneuvering through difficult forest roads, ensuring that armored elements preserved surprise while approaching villages whose defenders expected slower, more deliberate movements. As Abrams' task force advanced, American crews demonstrated disciplined initiative, responding immediately whenever German obstacles appeared along constricted approaches. These swift actions reflected training that emphasized counterattacks even under fire, enabling tankers to neutralize threats before enemy gunners adjusted positions effectively along snowy ridgelines. Abrams trusted subordinate leaders, allowing decentralized decisions that exploited fleeting vulnerabilities within overstretched German formations. His approach reflected Marshall's belief that initiative at junior levels increased overall effectiveness, creating tactical opportunities during moments when visibility and communication limited centralized control. Enemy resistance stiffened near road junctions, yet Abrams maintained offensive tempo, ordering rapid flanking maneuvers that shattered German cohesion. These actions prevented encirclement attempts aimed at delaying relief forces, forcing defenders to retreat before establishing coordinated kill zones against advancing American armor. Abrams' tanks pushed through artillery-scarred villages, striking quickly whenever reconnaissance identified weak points within German defensive screens. His doctrine required constant forward pressure, preventing enemy units from reorganizing lengthy columns that had extended dangerously while attempting to choke Bastogne's isolated garrison. German commanders struggled to counter Abrams' rapid thrusts, finding their own armored formations constrained by fuel shortages and narrow terrain. Abrams' speed magnified these disadvantages, transforming local engagements into cascading setbacks that eroded planned timetables. Across the northern sector of the Bulge battlefield, approaching Bastogne, Abrams continued pressing despite mounting fatigue among tank crews who had advanced for days under freezing conditions. Their perseverance, shaped by training that prioritized immediate action, enabled them to maintain cohesion while pushing deeper into contested territory near battered American defensive lines. Abrams' arrival signaled the triumph of Marshall's doctrine under fire, demonstrating how rapid response combined with aggressive leadership could reverse operational crises. His actions reinforced the American belief that initiative, speed, and decisive counterattack remained decisive tools for transforming desperate situations into strategic victories. The snowbound Ardennes proved a harsh testing ground for decentralized decision-making, because commanders faced fractured terrain, limited visibility, and rapidly shifting German attacks. And success depended on junior officers exercising immediate judgment, rather than waiting for distant headquarters to issue instructions. Infantry platoons were empowered to counterattack spontaneously, because small unit initiative disrupted enemy probes, and officers learned that swift local actions could prevent larger formations from exploiting weak points along frozen roads and forested approaches surrounding Bastogne. Communication lines were often cut by artillery fire because weather and enemy shelling isolated units, and decentralized command ensured that forward leaders could act decisively, launching aggressive strikes without delay while maintaining coherence with broader tactical objectives. Tank commanders coordinated locally with infantry, because Marshall's doctrine emphasized integration over rigid hierarchy, and armored units exploited gaps rapidly, keeping German forces off balance while advancing through dense woods and snow-laden terrain that impeded conventional maneuvers. Artillery observers acted independently when targeting forward enemy concentrations, because immediacy amplified battlefield impact, and they adjusted fire on the move to support counterattacks that prevented attackers from consolidating positions or preparing coordinated thrusts against isolated American positions. Patrols conducted reconnaissance and engaged enemy scouts without waiting for higher approval, because initiative ensured information reached forward commanders quickly, and preemptive strikes disrupted German situational awareness while enabling defenders to anticipate thrusts along critical crossroads in the Ardennes winter. Supply officers adapted quickly to shifting demands, because mobile counterattacks consumed ammunition at unexpected rates, and they improvised resupply points, ensuring units maintained momentum, even when traditional lines of communication were severed by snow, shelling, or terrain obstacles. Commanders reinforced confidence in lower-level initiative, because successful independent actions produced immediate tactical gains, and soldiers internalized that seizing fleeting opportunities determined survival more than cautious adherence to slow, hierarchical planning models under combat stress. Decentralized decision-making multiplied the effects of coordinated counterattacks, because multiple autonomous units acting aggressively forced German commanders to react continuously, creating confusion that slowed enemy tempo while allowing American forces to reclaim lost ground and restore operational initiative across contested sectors. By the end of the Ardennes fighting, initiative had proven itself a decisive weapon because rapid, decentralized action prevented collapse, sustained defensive cohesion, and allowed American forces to transform temporary encirclement into enduring resistance, demonstrating that empowered leaders could exploit chaos to strategic advantage in modern combat. George Marshall's emphasis on instant action created a lasting foundation for American combat strategy, because rapid decision-making, aggressive counterattacks, and decentralized leadership became central to modern doctrine, and these principles shaped training programs, operational planning, and battlefield execution across multiple campaigns during World War II. The lessons learned at Fort Benning influenced generations of officers, because simulations, maneuvers, and exercises reinforced immediate reaction as a core skill, and leaders internalized that hesitation often proved more dangerous than calculated risk in dynamic, high-intensity combat environments across varied terrains. Marshall's reforms fostered junior leader empowerment, because decentralization allowed platoon and company commanders to exploit opportunities swiftly, and this approach encouraged initiative, creativity, and flexibility while maintaining alignment with overall strategic objectives in both defensive and offensive operations. The North African campaign tested these ideas under fire, because troops confronted mechanized enemy units, desert conditions, and unpredictable engagements, and successful counterattacks validated Marshall's philosophy, demonstrating that speed and initiative could compensate for numerical or logistical disadvantages. The Ardennes offensive illustrated the doctrine's maturity, because units like Bastogne defenders and Abrams armored task forces applied immediate counterattacks decisively, and their actions prevented operational collapse while forcing enemy forces to react to American tempo rather than dictate it. Training programs incorporated realistic stressors, because Marshall understood that battlefield chaos required reflexive judgment, and exercises emphasized decision-making under fire, reinforcing the principle that rapid action combined with disciplined coordination increased survivability and combat effectiveness. Doctrine evolved to integrate combined arms because infantry, armor, artillery, and air support could act rapidly and cohesively, and coordinated instant actions amplified battlefield impact, allowing smaller units to disrupt superior forces, demonstrating the force-multiplying effect of initiative at every level. Marshall's emphasis on aggressive counteraction influenced post-war military strategy, because NATO planners and American combat theorists adopted immediate response as a standard, and this philosophy informed approaches to mobility, firepower coordination, and operational tempo during Cold War and modern conflicts. Command culture shifted, because leaders internalized that flexibility and speed were as important as firepower, and American units learned to anticipate opportunities, act decisively, and maintain psychological pressure on opponents, shaping the mindset of subsequent generations of soldiers and commanders alike. Ultimately, Marshall's legacy demonstrated that doctrine, training, and leadership emphasizing instant action created enduring superiority, because American forces consistently exploited initiative to achieve strategic objectives, and his ideas remain central to understanding why rapid, aggressive response continues to define modern military effectiveness.